as any to start the show.
Science.
Rise and shine, sleepyhead. It's a brand new day.
Good morning.
Now prepare to experience the most outrageous man on radio.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
Brilliant.
Okay.
That was weird.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
This is insane.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
Thank you. I have no idea what happened with that brilliant thing. It should have just said brilliant. There apparently is not a stop on there, which everything is a learning experience for you people out there, by the way.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
All right, so let's see here.
Brilliant.
So it needs to just... Let's look at that again. Work with me here.
Okay.
Brilliant.
That can be like stopped at 1. You have no idea what I'm talking about. What a way to start a show. Hi. Welcome. Welcome to my nightmare. Okay. I have this stop at 6.06 for some reason. And it really should just stop at like 1. Let's see what happens. Let's try that again.
Brilliant.
Now let's see if we do 2 in a row. What happens?
Brilliant.
Okay.
That's better.
Brilliant.
Okay.
I know.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
We know that's stupid. Hey, how you doing? Coffee's hotter and hotter. Cat didn't eat all his food last night. I was expecting that bowl to be empty. Because one of the things he's getting fed is something that's supposed to, an appetite enhancer or something like that. I don't know. His motor functions and all that kind of stuff seem to have improved. So we'll just have to take it day at a time, you know. It's going to be a nightmarish 10 days, and then after that, alternately for, I don't know, another week or so after that. I have to do this stuff every day, every other day then. But for the next 9 days, I have to give him two like injections, not injections, but in a syringe in his mouth, an antibiotic and I don't know if it's a steroid of some kind or something weird like that. I have to put an appetite enhancer thing I'm putting it in a little pill thing, in a little treat kind of thing that he likes, and hoping that's working. I don't know if the treat thing's interfering with that or not. And there comes the coal trucks. And it's 3:33 a.m. exactly. Eastern time. 3:33. I can't believe I'm up this early. But it's the cat. Cat woke me up, you know. And then I put this powdery stuff in his food that is supposed to do something. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, that's I was going to say it's a whatchamacallit. You don't hear people say that much anymore. It's a probiotic, but it has some kind of liver flavor to it. The first day I gave it to him yesterday, he seemed to eat his food. So I don't know. We'll see what happens when I go up after the show. I heard the pitter-patter of little feet wandering around out out and about the studio here, but I didn't see him when I grabbed my coffee out of the kitchen. So we'll find out. Tony Caravan's The Morning Show, Mayhem on the Horizon. I think I may have used that graphic once before in a different context. And the show says, you really do have a choice. And I put in a chat, people, you've got to get control of yourselves. And it looks like there was a chat deleted. It's no big mystery. It was just basically the same thing. But I was backspacing and somehow it like posted the thing. And that the shirt I was wearing was the Doug and Stacy shirt that I bought, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I think. I support these other people on the internet. Though I am kind of a little disappointed with Doug, because, they were building that log cabin, his mother's log cabin. And first of all, I hope he paid that friend of his who like slaved to get the job done. But second of all, they never really, as far as I know, at least I would have to go sift through all their site, but I never really saw a final tour of the place, and maybe the mother didn't want them to, and they also had problems with the basement and different things, and it's like a lot of these off-gridders, they almost think it's like, or people building things out in the middle of nowhere. They're getting revenue from YouTube, right? And their various things they do. So it's not like they're flat broke like me, thinking, okay, where's the next, I need a bag of concrete to keep eroding out of the yard or something, right? I don't have the $3.85 or price is probably $6 and $7, $8 now. That's not their issue. And so, they have money. And it's like, it's not some kind of crime to admit, to bring in some sort of outside help to do a thing, to have it done properly, particularly if it's your mother's house. Like their basement was flooding. And it's like a wooden floor. And, I don't know. I could potentially see problems there. There's a creek that runs by that could flood. They should have put a retainer wall up there. I always tell people about retainer walls. I took mechanical drawing in high school, and then I minored in architecture in college. But I was basically in the College of Arts and Architecture, and I focused in film. And, film and television, basically. Entertainment field. And, of course, publishing was my family's background that goes back three generations. If you, since I don't have any offspring, with other members of my family, it goes back. It's like a fourth generational thing because they've got kids who are still doing it. Yeah, or a child. The coloring is just changing at will here, and there's no choice. So I wanted to talk today about, because the last 4 shows, yesterday was a busy day for me. So again, this is the third time you hear this.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
And I'm also going to do the
Weather Watch forecast.
Just because I'm curious and you might be too. Okay, it's currently 54 degrees here in the mid-Atlantic states. Like I said, east of the Ohio Valley, the Appalachians run through here, but I'm not near the coast. That gives you a ballpark idea of where I am. So it's raining now. It's going to rain. Well, it's supposed to continue raining for another 2 hours, but it seems to be a light rain, I hope. Though there's a 90% chance of rain today, so even though there might be a lull around sunrise, I think it's probably rain later. I don't care. I got plants in the ground. The rest of tomorrow, it's supposed to be 75 degrees and 63 for the overnight. Chance of thunderstorms. Thursday, 40% chance of thunderstorm, 66. Friday, 64. And then on the weekend, it dips down to the 50s in the daytime and 34, frost at night. But I did put some plants in. So anyway, that's your...
The Weather Watch forecast.
If you can believe anything. And I had a pretty good work day yesterday. You know, I'm beat. I was tired yesterday. But sometimes it's a good tired. I multitasked spent several hours outside in the backyard, in and around the backyard, doing things. Touching up some painting things, which is good because if it rained, it didn't rain until the nighttime. And it was hot, warm yesterday, over 50 for, long enough and dry for long enough for just one coat of like some exterior paint I think it took. It was dry when I came in the house, and that was only like after being out 2 or 3 hours. So that's not a problem. So I did a little bit of touch-ups of some areas on the fence that between me and my neighbor, I happen to have a paint that matches the paint of that fence, which is technically part of the fence is hers. So where I filled some gaps so that critters couldn't come in, I painted it the same color. I don't think she'll even have an idea that anything was changed, right? To be able to notice that minute detail. I planted some lettuce seeds. I thought I had chard seeds, and I didn't. So I put in some more radishes because the radishes I have out there look like they got wiped out for some reason. Like they started to grow, but I don't know. I think the frost isn't supposed to get to them, but it did. I had them covered at one point, but then I uncovered them because the plastic thing I had on top of them was like blowing off. And the rodent problem was serious enough that I wasn't thinking about putting burlap. So on these seeds, I covered it with burlap and put the burlap down with, to hold it in place from the wind with rocks. Large, what they call river rocks, smooth, rounded rocks. That's not to say some critter can't crawl underneath it. I didn't see that thing for over 24 hours since I concreted the last hole, but that's not to say that it hasn't been out and about doing things. That said, I put some tree and shrub soil around my apple trees, and I transplanted. I had this one apple tree that was only about like so tall. It was blooming every year, but unlike the other ones that are, it just wasn't going anywhere. So I transplanted it. It already had buds on it too, which is really weird. And the other trees haven't. It's a very strange thing. So anyway, I moved that next to a dwarf Christmas tree that someone had given me, and put this special shrub, I had this bag of shrub soil, fertilizer, whatever, I got, which actually it said garden soil on it really big. And I guess I didn't see the tree and shrubs when I purchased it, but it worked out to my advantage that way. So I did that, shored up a couple of little things, did some cleanup, that kind of general, yard work. And, it was rewarding and, and was active and, basically kept me in shape. I don't know if you heard that slurp, but this coffee's really hot. Sometimes you gotta slurp hot coffee. But anyway, so that's that. That was me. That's what I did. Okay. Now,
Hey, it's me. How you doing, man?
Well, personally, I guess I'm doing okay. I seem to look somewhat normal, right? You know, like I say, I'm keeping a little scruffiness on the beard. Not doing the close shave thing, you know, the Brillo pad look or whatever it's called. My back could use some support. This chair isn't really situated the way I'd like it to be. But I happened to catch something yesterday in between, you know, after I came back in the house and whatever, and YouTube as usual. And it was a psychologist at some psychology and psychiatry convention, or, you know, I think they used a different word for it, you know, some kind of thing. And he was speaking. I guess it was done over, you know, with video speakers type of thing. You know, it was a virtual conference or whatever. And this guy was making a very strong statement about the state of things today, kind of like the psychology of the world. And I first started, normally I probably would have watched a little bit of it, but I watched it right to the end. And, you know, it kind of made me think, and it kind of gave me a little bit of inspiration for today's show. And realizing that, you know, I've been dealing with this mayhem on the horizon in the past, well, you know, it's been an ongoing theme. You know, there's Jeff Bezos's rocket escaping, you know, the mayhem, where whatever he thinks he's going to do, he's got a rocket outside of his like bunker out there in the Southwest, and an ark, right? It's so big that they had to take down a bridge in order to get it out of the shipyard where it was built. I mean, that guy, you know, when you're one of the top richest people in the world, it's like you could do crazy things. But in there, you know, for many people, they probably have listened to the stuff I've talked about, and they see me painting this picture on this title card that I have on the screen. And I probably could have found a cleaner. I messed around with this in a couple of graphics programs, but unfortunately, graphics programs that are, you know, not Photoshop, you know. Because Photoshop wants to charge you, you know, extortion fees. You got to pay monthly cloud services, right? So anyway, I discontinued that, but I found something else that I bought for, I don't know. I paid for it. Like I pay for my stuff. That's the thing a lot of people don't know. And I get angered too, because over the years I bought a lot of fonts. You know, this is just me ranting and responding to the hey, it's me guy. But, you know, a lot of people don't. A lot of people, it's like free this, free that, grab this, grab that. They're, you know, they use photos. They just grab a photo from somewhere. They do whatever they want to do. Pirate this, pirate that. And it's like, you know, I must have spent at least $10,000 on software, you know, fonts, software, and all that kind of stuff over the past 20 years, maybe more. So you could add that to the price of like this current computer that I can't even run the present operating system on, which works with this proprietary monitor, which is a beautiful monitor. But it's like a $2,000 system, but I upgraded it because I put 16 gigs of RAM in it, DRAM. And then I have over to the, you know, the thing that's putting the white glare on my face, you know, and it's given me this, you know.
The only station that matters.
The sound effects is the older computer that I've had for over 15 years or something like that. But anyway, So I mean, I have a lot of money invested in computers, and I have I have a computer in the kitchen and a laptop upstairs. I mean, I've got at least 20, and I've given some computers away. You know, I must have put 30, 40 over the years for $40,000 into computers and computing peripherals and everything to go with it. Yeah, that's a lot of money. Think about that. It's funny how, how much money can be spent. And the idea that the industry, and this show's not going to be about this, I'm just going to get through this quick, that the industry could be so, I don't know what to say, just greedy, I guess would be the easiest thing to say. That they constantly have this planned obsolescence that they've learned from the automotive industry and major appliance industries. That, they make these computers outdated even though they don't have to be, right? I understand. I've seen some videos, but I haven't watched them in detail. But people already talking about how the Apple Studio, their new overpriced thing, is shipping not like access where it's accessing its full potential or something. So in other words, they're like it's like technology's held back, and it's made where you're not supposed to be able to open it and mess with it or something like that. But the idea is that, they're already planning. They could have put out a better, faster. It's better and faster than most computers. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, it's still not. It gives them that opportunity for them to come out with the next version, but really they already have the technology for the version for the version that they'll be selling you in another 18 months or something like that, or another Pro X model that comes out just in time for the holiday buying season next year or later this year. That's not free market capitalism. That's abuse of the system, and that's how we got here. That's just further defining this whole idea of, separation of, the ruling elite from the serfs. But anyway, back to this guy, the psychologist, PhD, definitely guy's got a PhD or more, multiple PhDs, the way he was talking, it sounded. I can't even think of his name. And I couldn't find it on this computer because I watched it on my TV upstairs, and the way my accounts are set up, my history here won't show history from up there unless I change accounts, but I can't do that because I'm using this account to broadcast live right now. So I would have to end the show. Yeah. So I'm sorry. I should have written the guy's name down. I'll tell you at some future point if it's apropos. So the idea is that it's as if we're a culture of death. And what he was trying to get at is that death, not so much in the obvious sense of even this mayhem on the horizon, wars and, there's a lot of talk on the internet now about famine. We'll get into that. But the idea of objects, non-living objects. So it's a culture of death or dead things. Instead of the focus being on flesh and blood, people, humans. And so that, and that even would get into transhumanism too. And with all the stuff I've been talking about AI, this might seem, off the wall or counterintuitive to my most recent, I guess, 4-part series excuse me, that I really
Really funny. Really funny.
sorry about that. You can't even get comfortable. So I'm trying to do. But it's not really. I mean, you have to be able to exist in this, on multiple levels of reality. You can't ignore the socioeconomic geopolitics of the world, just like you can't ignore the psychology, of what's going on in people's minds, right? This guy went so far as almost talking about people being narcissistic psychopaths. And in many ways, I've used that terminology in previous shows describing, it seems the people that are kind of pulling the strings out there. But that, narcissism, is running rampant. And the question is, why? That's what now, so, this is I'm getting into my own thing. Like I said, that was just something. It was interesting to see a guy basically. He was talking about, that this is dystopia was inevitable. It was the conclusion I got from him, which I basically have said as well. But what I'm trying to get at, so that was the inspiration. That was that, Now, from my perspective, is that I agree dystopia is inevitable, and I often use the word, throw in the Mad Max dystopian, society is just on the horizon, so like this title card, Mayhem on the Horizon. And the fact that people just don't have any self-control and are so materialistic or, oriented that they're just going to snap, and everybody now is the newest fear mongering going on, and it comes down from the top. Even the president himself has said there will be food shortages. And these so-called YouTube millionaires, as I call them, the pundits, right, are talking about this is the topic of discussion on cable TV, news media, internet, political candidates. And they're talking about food shortages, starvation, and famine. And of course, they're trying to blame all this stuff on Putin, which, just wipe that whole thing from your mind. Because, yes, there's fertilizer that is gotten from Russia, and there's wheat that is gotten, great word, from Ukraine. But, the U.S. has always been the breadbasket of the world, so to speak. And, the grains, the high-carb diet, when I say 40,000 people a week in the U.S. are dying unnecessarily from preventable causes, most of that is because of the overuse of carbs and sugars in our foods and the daily values that, and how the FDA approves these things. And these things are advertised on the cable and TV channels. And that's where I always get into the concept of, why this is hypocrisy for profit among media people particularly, but the politicians are, just as guilty. Of course, the politicians are marionettes of this whole, along with the media. And it's amazing, those two meme cards that I created, I don't know how many months ago, how much usage I get out of those. I mean, they're just perfect. And every show, there's something there. I'm wearing a shirt that's kind of a size, almost a size smaller than I normally would wear, but a size that I want to wear. So it's loose in some areas. It's a little tight in some other areas. but it's kind of, the shirt, and it's the weight that it's the shirt that I want to get to. And I think if I keep doing this yard work and all this kind of stuff, that this is just a personal thing, that I will achieve it this summer. And that's my goal, is to have a physical body that is healthy and fit. That's the thing. Going forward, healthy and fit. And to be growing my own food, such as why I planted lettuce yesterday, which is a cool weather crop. And even if we do get a frost, I think that burlap, that's only 5 days from now. Those seeds, I don't expect them to be popping up. So even if there is a frost, we'll be through at that point. Today's the 12th of April, calendar year 2022. So we'll be past the halfway point of April. And at this point, you just get a couple of frosts. You could even get some snow flurries. It happened last year in May. Got a flurry one time. But I mean, they vanish. Because it's like this week, even though it's, what did I say? It's going to be like 70 degrees tomorrow. Even though it's going to be raining, but the overnight's going to be 60 or 50. Tonight's overnight's going to be 50. The following day is going to be in the 60s and the overnight 50. So you see what I mean? So you're not only getting rain coming down, but you've got this air temperature it's going to be pretty much muggy and humid. I'm not looking forward to that because I still haven't dealt with my upstairs leakage, and the heat's not going to come on my house to dry things out, so I have to worry about mildew or mold or mildew issues. Yeah, add that to the list as the coal trucks come by. So I'm going to have to waste some money on some anti-mildew spray chemicals again. But it's like I really have no choice. So I need to spray some of that stuff around up in the attic just to keep some of the damp cloths in some areas that just seem to accumulate moisture from getting mildewy. See, in the summertime, it doesn't matter because it's an attic. And I have cross ventilation. I have screens on the one side. So I could, at any given time, I keep the one screen open from middle of May through to October. And then certain days when I'm up there working on things, which I will be this year because I got to solve these problems, I'll open the window on the other side, and I'll have a fan. I have a screen I could put in. It's not built-in screen because it's a 100-year-old house. But I put this screen in, and then I put a box fan in front of it, and I just pull that air from one side of the room to the other out and circulate that whole thing, and that keeps that. And plus, you get the natural attic gets hot, heat, so it hasn't been a problem. That said, let's get back into this story. So I said yesterday, look, I don't want to be a doom and gloomer, but, you have a choice, as I said and the choice is simple. It's, you have to focus on yourself and the people you care about. And if you have community and family around you, unfortunately I don't, which is, it's kind of sad. And it gets lonely, being this way. And then I top it off, I have my companion is a cat who who's touch and go, he's got some serious health issues. I mean, I'm treating him for it and I hope he gets over it. The veterinarian seemed to be positive. I'm just hoping she was positive and, in a real sense, not in an iffy sense. And here's several $100s worth of prescriptions, and you're going to have to, amidst your insane life that you have, you're going to have to do administer these things 4 or 5 times a day, as if you're a full-time nurse to a sick patient. You know what I mean? And so, and the poor cat, he looks to me and it's sad, you know, it could make you cry sometimes, you know, like I'm hungry. I'd really like to have some fresh fish type of, you know, some kind of real smelly cat food, you know. It's like, no, you can't. You got to eat this bland stuff, and you've got to take these shots. They've got to put this stuff in your mouth that tastes horrible. You know, why can't they put flavors in? They could flavor everything else, right? I'm really annoyed with the veterinarian, the pet industry. You know, they make hundreds of billions of dollars. If you ever want to know, I know it sounds, this is a flow of consciousness thing, but we're going to always circulate back to the main topic. So chill with me and relax and follow me if you want to. But this is all has to do with the same thing, because it just shows where our priorities are, because our pets are companions and they're living things, unlike these, as this psychologist referred to things, dead objects, you know, things without life. This is not living. This should not be the center of your life. It's not a living thing. It's a tool. It's an object. It could be used, utilized, and it may, you know, and you could even have fun with it and fun and function. But it's, you know, to be cold about it, it's a dead object. It's not, there is no life there. All right. It's an inanimate piece of glass, aluminum, and silicon, and whatever else they throw in there. Right. But I've mentioned this a long time ago. Apart from some of the jobs, you know, I went and got my Social Security card with two other friends when I was 16 years old. Turns, you know. And we went down to we walked to the Social Security office. And at that time, you just went up to the counter. Lady behind the counter was like a friend of my mother's. I came from a small town. And we said we wanted to get our Social Security cards, you know, because we wanted to go get jobs. And you had to have a Social Security number to get a job. And so three of us had for our whole lives, I guess, the last digit of our Social Security numbers. I forget whose was whose. There wasn't something I would remember. But in other words, my number, one, you know, I don't know who went first or whatever, but our numbers we had the exact same Social Security number, except for the last digit would have changed. You know, they were consecutive because she just pulled them off a roll, you know, and like tore them out. Here's yours. Here's yours. Here's yours. Right. And I went right out and I ended up getting a job at like Rite Aid. And I was stocking shelves. And I've told that story and I'm not going to tell it again. So another friend of mine who I was in a band with, who's no longer with us, he died, unfortunately. I think he ended up working at his brother had a gas station garage type of place. And I'm imagining that's what he did. And I don't know what the other guy did. And now where he is, I've lost track with him. He was a friend of mine. These were two friends of mine when we were 16, you know. And so, you know, so I worked my whole life, you know. But after that, I'm trying to get back on topic because, you know, when I get on these tangents and it's early in the morning, your brain's just waking up. That later on in life, because I was trying to talk, what was I talking about? I almost wish you know, we have the technology for this. There should be like a transcript in like the corner of this OBS application, this open source thing that like translates, and I could just look to see what I was, you know. There's so much technology today not being utilized, I guess is what I'm saying. Well, anyway, I'm trying to think in the early jobs that I would have had. Oh, okay. So it came to me. So after doing a couple of, you know, childhood jobs, 16-year-old, 17-year-old jobs. I worked as like a bus boy, kind of not even a waiter. I was in the work, kitchen work at a place, a restaurant in a Boscov's department store. And I had gotten the job to help build out the restaurant itself. And then when the restaurant opened, I expected I'd have a fairly decent job because I basically knew everything about it, and it ended up being like they brought in some weird manager, and I was like busboy. I didn't last long there. I just said, screw you, I quit. I knew more about the restaurant than the manager they hired. But, I was a kid, so to heck with it. I was in high school, screw that. And then I guess I did something. Then I ended up going down to shore and getting summer jobs and stuff like that. It was a whole different time, a different era, right? But anyway, after that, I went to, eventually out of high school, went to college. And in the summers I spent down at the shore, and I ended up halfway through college at one of my summer jobs. It wasn't really a job. I was already independent. I was into publishing like a entertainment magazine at a seaside resort, and I was trying to purchase this print shop. I was already at 18, at that point you could, drink and all that kind of stuff or whatever. It was just a weird thing. And I mean, I did multiple things happened to me at that part of my life, and that business thing didn't work out that I was trying to do because I guess I was too young and I didn't have any, credit or anything. But I ended up taking a year off of college and working in Philadelphia for a company that was involved in supermarket marketing, right? And so they had an in with the A&P store, the Great Atlantic and Pacific, right? It was a grocery store called A&P. And though, that, which as far as I know, no longer exists, but I don't know if some stores kept the name or something like that. But the company was like big. It was the national grocery store. It was one of the big national names. And they eventually went out of business, but that was years later. But what I learned at that time, because I was like the marketing director for this publication, that's why I took a year off college, because they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. It was like a company car, a salary you would get like upon graduation type of salary. And I was like the marketing director, it was ridiculous. But, I had already spent 2 summer jobs publishing, my own individual entertainment magazine, and I had all these ideas, and I guess I impressed the owner of it and the guy who ran it, and they just thought, we need to bring this guy in, give him whatever he wants. In which case, I had no idea. I could have probably been getting 10 or 20,000 a year more. But I was a kid in my mind. Some other people at that age would, wouldn't consider themselves that. But at this point, it's like, yeah, I was youthful. I was, I don't know. So to me, it was a lot of money, and it was crazy. But what happened? The moral of this story is that by being a marketing director for a publication that was had this inside deal with this major supermarket chain, and we were in there just like the other, just like you would see those tabloids at the checkout counter and stuff. Like we were in the store, we had our own display and stuff. But I had to go I was over at the A&P offices because we used to do, the centerfold of this publication that we put out. The rest was just filler, really. TV listings, stupid recipes, feature stories from services that you could just buy. That's how a lot of these publications, you could just buy these pre-made, things that people produce and sell to people who put out publications. Even in newspapers to this day, there's people that just buy the content, from the syndicated things, and some of them aren't even so-called syndicated. Be that as it may, I used to go over to A&P and talk with their their marketing department and advertising people. And so I learned a lot from these old timers. See, that was the thing when I was young. I was surrounded by old timers, and I was fascinated by them because they had all this knowledge. Whereas other people my age were just hanging around, with people their own age, right? It's one of the reasons why I never, at a young age, my band never went anywhere, is because I was kind of expanding my mind with all of these. I was more interested in learning and adventures and going out to the bigger cities than staying at home and forming a rock band, which I did. But I mean, considering that have written 50 some songs, there's no reason why, and I was writing back then, but just nothing was coming. I wasn't, the band wasn't really performing that stuff. That, we probably could have been something, when I think about it. Because there's a handful of songs of my songs, I might say out of the 50, but there's a good handful of songs definitely could have been hits. If I would have had a band backing me up and we would have done the tour thing. In other words, gone on the road and paid our dues because my originals were good enough, strong enough that with a band backing me up and perfecting that stuff on the road, I think things could have happened. But, I didn't do that. Instead, I ended up getting a series of jobs and then going, all kinds of weird stuff, going to college, ended up involved with getting a security clearance and living in Capitol Hill, D.C., all kinds of weird stuff, and traveling around the world, and it's a longer story. But back to this A&P thing and pets. That's what this is about. And so what I learned was that the priority at a supermarket is shelf space. It's invaluable. And we used to get, not only were we had in with the major supermarket chain that was allowed us to put our publication in their store, because the deal was they had the centerfold, their circular was inside it, right? So it saved them the trouble, and we put that together for them too, right? So we were functioning almost as an agency, in-house agency for them. It was very strange. I was around at the days, if you've ever seen the show Mad Men, I was basically around right at the end of that. In other words, Don Draper would have been an old man at that time if he was a real if he was a real person. I met Don Draper, many Don Drapers. And even going into A&P, I could still have this vision in my head. Imagine these old metal desks you see. Imagine a giant room on a second floor or something where there were just rows of desks. Maybe 6 rows wide and just going back, I don't know, 30, 40, 60 deep. And all towards the back, those desks were all emptied. And it was just like maybe a dozen or a couple dozen people at desks towards the front of the room. I remember going into like their marketing area. But at one time, this was a company that was huge and that they had all these advertising and marketing people, right? And every one of those desks would have been filled with somebody with a typewriter and a telephone, doing that business. And it was the same when I got involved with the ad agencies, because I was trying to, that was part of my idea. I'm sorry, my sock was scratching my side of my foot. I'm very uncomfortable right now. I'm just trying to tell you. I have to try to I have to fix this somehow. I don't know if that's going to work or not. Not really. See, my chair's too short. And those who've watched this show know that. So I've tried to get some extension padding on it, like things you put on lawn chairs or whatever, and build it up to a point, because I've taken it as high as I could take it. Anyway, that's what I was doing. So even the ad agencies were the same way. They were skeleton crews, operating them. But it was still going on. That industry was still there. And there was still like the Philadelphia Advertising Club. And I was involved in that. And I was like the youngest guy. They were all old men predominantly. And a lot of them took me under their wing, and the people I worked with with this publication, those were older guys, guys with wives and kids and stuff. And so I was learning an awful lot of stuff from, people who, a generation before me. But, the golden age of advertising and marketing. And so that's how later on in life, I ended up being a creative director of an advertising agency, because, I started, and then I had printing background in printer's ink in my blood, as they say. So it was like the perfect storm of, at that time to be understand graphics, printing, publishing, advertising, marketing, right? And then swinging that into entertainment. Do you see what I mean? Right? It was so it was just a weird confluence of events and, you might say, talents, but experiences that put me on a life path at a very early age. But tying back into this and, circulating back, because this all has to do with this same story, is the takeaway was that when you walk in a grocery store and you see an entire aisle dedicated to potato chips and pretzels and candy, you don't have to know supermarketing or not. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of people buying potato chips, pretzels, and candy, because shelf space and shelf positioning on top of shelf space, just in general, is king, is gold, right? And when you see something, they used to call them shelf talkers. That means something that jumps out off the rack that says, sale, or the item, or sometimes they'll have a coupon you could used to have a coupon you could tear right off and use that day or something. That what you paid extra money. And the way that worked with the supermarket, and we were in on that, and we used to negotiate deals. It's amazing the stuff I learned. But say some company would come to us, say a famous potato chip company or soup company or something. And what they would say is, we'll advertise with you. We'll put an ad in your publication if you can get A&P to give us an end dial display or a shelf talker or eye level. See, you want to have your product at eye level, right? And then it's just below eye level and just above eye level. That's prime supermarket space. People don't understand about these subtle things that go on, and how there's like value to it and whatever. And I don't even know if the people today doing this stuff are even hip to these concepts. I may be turning you on to something that you could make. You could command six figures by just approaching some company like, I don't know, some convenience store or some regional supermarket. Because this is going back to, like I say, the Mad Men days. And so we would go, then I'd go to A&P and I'd go to that big, ridiculous room, empty room with just these guys. And I'd say, look, here's the deal, such and such soups or such and such chips is advertising with us. So they're going to, so they're willing, they're putting big promotion together to push this new potato chip or this particular can of soup. There goes the cold trucks. And what they're looking for is, to see what you can do for them for this promotion. If you could get an end dial display or a shelf talker or, eye level. And what they used to trade in, it wasn't like payola, like in the radio days, which that stuff was going on still around that time frame too, where the record companies would come in and actually like kind of do underhand deals with the radio stations, literally pay the GMs or the jocks and stuff to feature, to push a record. Well, what these guys would do is they would say, we're prepared to give them so many extra cases of soup. You see, for if they'll do the deal. And so what happens is that takes, if I'm the retailer and I get, say, even 2 cases of 24 cans of soup, and I'm buying, a dozen cases, that those 2 free cases of 24, those 48 cans of soup, I can deduct that price, from the overall thing. And so that increases my profit margin on that soup. So it's worthwhile me doing some kind of negotiation. And sometimes then we'd be out of the picture and they'd go direct, It's almost like I would like put them together. My goal was just to get advertising in our publication. Right? I just wanted to sell the ads. And that's how I got involved with the advertising agencies. I used to make presentations to them. Okay, a little lesson in advertising that you might not know, which was one of my biggest disappointments when I used to watch the show Mad Men, is that, and I used to tell a friend of mine who worked with me at my age when I was a creative director and we had an agency, I said, I enjoyed Mad Men, and Draper. I mean, before they got the ridiculous downfall, I don't know why they have to destroy these characters in such a weird way, because it wasn't like that in the real world. It was it was actually fun. It was like the first season of Mad Men. That's what the life was like, really. And I started in Philadelphia, and then it ended up getting involved in New York, which was like the place to be for advertising. And again, it was the waning days of it all, but it was still happening. And so I got to see that and those people. And yeah, that it wasn't, Mad Men failed because there were no episodes like what I just told you. Like it's as if the writers had like an overview of the advertising industry. They had some consultants from the advertising industry but they were like afraid to give, like as if what I just told you was a trade secret or something. And it's not a trade secret. Maybe it is. Maybe they consider those trade secrets or something, but I didn't just, sign any non-disclosure agreement. It's just common sense, right? And so now we look at the pet aisle. And so if you have an entire aisle that is cat food, dog food, and maybe at the very end some bird seed and a few things for some, hamsters or some exotic thing, other types of pets people may, turtle food and fish food, right? But predominantly, cat and dog food, a whole aisle in a supermarket. Yet the value of that is like incomprehensible, so that's a hundreds of $billion industry. And, obviously they're selling a lot of product to maintain those items on those shelves. And so what I'm saying is, getting back to this vet thing, is that it's being this $100 billion industry, having veterinarians who have $500,000 in student debt. It's that you have to be very cautious, in believing that you're getting 100%, accuracy and, prognosis, I guess prognoses or something. I don't know. And so that's the scary part. Are they just trying to sell you more prescriptions? And then Big Pharma, of course, has gotten into the pet industry. Big Pharma is out of control. Drugs for, dogs and cats, certain kind of pet foods, right? And all this stuff. And, a lot of that stuff isn't really, that's not like necessarily FDA, it's an animal. So, there's some regulations involved in there some way, I think. But, it's not like, it's bad enough that, like I say, the 40,000 humans are dying from things the FDA approves, right? And that are high carbs and sugared out, that are causing all kinds of health issues with us and people unnecessarily dying. Don't take my word for it. You probably have a television set. You've seen the lawsuits, right, on TV. The law firm ads. So anyway, to get back to this idea of, how this works into everything. We've lost perspective, I think, of what it's like to be civilized, how to function in society, what community is, what it's like even to be human. And that's even reflected in the manner in which we, deal with our pets, right? The animal kingdom, so to speak. So I find that, in line with, kind of, what I'm talking about, over the past 500 some shows, maybe. And the 1,000 before that. This idea of, we're forgetting what it's like to be human. Or we've forgotten what it's like to be human. And we still, it's not like we don't have a choice in the matter. It's just we're allowing ourselves, just like the media and politicians have given up, and they're taking the bribes from the people who are contributing to their campaigns, or the advertisers that are advertising on their television stations. So they're not going to cover stories that are negative towards the major products that are advertised on their television, radio, or billboards, magazines, newspapers, whatever. Just like the politicians are literally allowing, Congress is literally allowing the lobbyists, which is, big, the corporatocracy, big tech, big ag, big pharma, etc., to even write amendments to laws, if not draft the bills themselves. And so the media and the politicians have become, I call it, marionettes. They're just puppets of this corporatocracy, not some constitutional republic that was set up, but it's some kind of it's a this, I don't know, because a lot call it technocracy, but it's beyond that. It's a corporatocracy because not everything's really technical. A lot of it's just like I just described. It's just wheeling and dealing, right? It's just marketing and advertising. It's profits, it's making a profit, but it's not like free market capitalism, in a constitutional republic. It's basically, a World Economic Forum international crime syndicate, which with a bunch of crime families, like the former United States, who has at the head of it now is a guy who's a bona fide crime boss and of a crime family, which is coming out, has been out, but is still in the minds of most people. They have no idea what I'm talking about. You see? So anyway, mayhem's on the horizon. But there's like this idea, the big thing they're pushing now, apart from war on TV, right? Everything, like as if this is World War III is about to happen, and, this site here, okay? That site isn't going to be because of like some of the tales I've told about the sun, expelling its outer shell or some CME, grid down situation. No, it's going to be because of, the Putin, World War III, and then food shortages, and then the mayhem that's going to erupt. Itchy. I shouldn't be scratching. Sorry. This is a brutally honest show. It always has been.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Anyway, so apparently in China the plague is big again. All right? They're welding people into places, and the Chinese people are like kind of revolting a little bit, which is weird. Footage is coming out. I don't know if it's propaganda or not, but why would the Chinese people put that kind of footage out? I mean, CCP, the Communist Chinese Party. So it seems to be authentic that, this stuff is, there's stuff going on. And they're starving in China too, right now, currently, supposedly. There's areas where these people can't get food. This is, I've seen this kind of footage. And then you have the President of the United States talking about that there's going to be, famine and starvation in Africa because a lot of the food that comes down from up because of this war, that's going to affect that. And then it's going to affect Europe, could be facing famine. And then he's saying, well, the U.S. is going to help and give some of our food. But meanwhile, they're talking about opening up the borders to, I don't know, you will end up having a couple more million mouths to feed coming in who will be on welfare, so they're just going to be getting free food, tons of free food. So there's this fear mongering going on now. The new thing that has just entered the fray is now that the world is going, by the end of the year, the world is going to go into starvation and famine. I mean, if you really want to look at this from some kind of biblical way, it's like it's the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Wars and rumors of wars, rumors of World War III, right? Disease, right? The plague that we've had. And now they're talking famine. You know what I mean? It's like it's out of control. Economy's collapsing, it's just, and so this is the presentation. It's mayhem on the horizon. And I don't have television, so I'm, like I say, I kind of get my news as firsthand as possible, direct from people, and I have to make, I have to be discerning enough to know when, something is accurate or, is just hype or propaganda. And I think I have enough life experience to be able to tell when there's, somebody's full of it, or, or something has been, I know enough about graphics, video, and, putting things together to know when there's something is faked or real. Right. So, I could separate stuff. So it seems to me that somehow there is, the Chinese are suffering again from, some kind of plague, which may or may not push back here. That there is food shortages. Is this some, ridiculous plan to starve out, all these people want to talk about reducing the population of the planet. I mean, are they going to starve the Africans, the Europeans, the Chinese, and then ultimately the Americans and South Americans and Canadians? Is this an idea to reduce the surface population by, I don't know. There's 8 billion people on the planet. Do they want to get rid of, a couple of billion of us? I don't know. But all I know is that if I were, and I'm not, if I were somebody watching the nightly news or one of these people watching these stupid pundits on YouTube, like Tim Pool, that guy is like, he's downright, just a provocateur, right? It's just like Joe Rogan. People elevate these guys, these people that are making tons of money, doing that kind of stuff. But, all they're doing is basically reinforcing articles that are appearing in mainstream media. They don't know anything, and they have some guest on, or their little crew discusses this thing among themselves. But it's basically they're talking about, famine, war, right? Plague, and, in politics. They're not getting into, they don't have like, it was a very roundabout way for me dealing with this, me questioning the pet industry, and the same goes with the food and the cereal aisle and things like that. Like there's an entire aisle of breakfast foods, most of which contain ridiculous amounts of high carbs and sugars, which are literally causing type 2 diabetes, obesity, and heart-related problems. And sugars and cancer aren't even good, Cancer feeds on sugar. Kidney disease, and like if you have gallbladder issues or something like that, you don't want to be consuming that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm saying. When you look at the CDC leading causes of death, and it's like averages out to 40,000 Americans a week are dying, and most of that stuff is probably preventable because it's items approved by the FDA. And yet there's a whole aisle in the supermarket, right, dedicated to, several aisles. Like I said before, there's been studies done that over 90% of the items in grocery stores are processed foods, even though when you first walk in, they give the illusion of having this fresh area of produce. But when you really look at it, it's just basically a bunch of apples, a bunch of tomatoes, and then there's some greens, and that. But if you count all the variety, of items, and compare that to the sheer numbers of processed food items, can after can, box after box, frozen food section after frozen food section, that the processed foods are like 90% of what people are buying. And when you watch people checking out, their carts are filled with these things that are killing them at the tune of 40,000 people a week. Well, 40,000 people a week aren't dying in Ukraine. You see what I'm saying? So we just can't see that. It's the same as I'm going to say it every episode. On average, according to law enforcement statistics, roughly 2,000 people are being murdered in the U.S. every week. These are weekly figures taken from national annual statistics. Now, it's not to say that this week 2,000 people will be murdered, right? But on average, annualized, that's approximately how many people are being murdered. And that doesn't include other violent crimes, And then you have a country that's a tinderbox, right? You have this red, blue, left, right, socialist, communist, libertarian, Republican, these people vehemently opposed to one another, and then these groups that basically are then there's these people that are outliers. They don't really care. They don't understand politics. They don't understand socioeconomic geopolitics or the economy or any of that stuff. They're just sitting there waiting. They're waiting for something to happen. And then when something happens, then they go in and they're opportunistic looters, smash and grabbers. And so what happens if there is this self-fulfilling prophecy of famine, of food shortages? In other words, like they did with toilet paper, but it was just toilet paper, okay? And people ended up, getting through that somehow, buying the cheap stuff and, I don't know, using tissues or paper towels. I don't know what people in some areas did. I made it through, but I was able to get what I needed to get. The price was just too high. I'm just one guy. I don't have a family here, But what happens when these people can't eat? I know I could remember people before even times got crazy when in the roommate days down at the seashore, getting back to that, where I'd have roommates that, the day before they would get their paycheck, they'd be like, I'm starving. I've said this before. And they'd just be like going crazy. And I'm going, man, I've got some saltine crackers and there's a jar of peanut butter in the kitchen. Make yourself a couple of crackers, peanut butter crackers, and go to bed, drink a glass of water and go to bed. Tomorrow you get paid and, whatever. But see, people don't think like that. Then they get their paycheck and they go out and they'd buy themselves some steak dinner or something, surf and turf dinner or something. And then they'd be broke halfway through the week again. And they'd be, I'm starving. And eventually a couple of guys, I remember roommates, went home to mama, right? Because it used to be like summer jobs out of high school, out of college, down the shore. They couldn't cope. That's why I try to put in my book, Then What? I have a budget in there, So I say, get the print version of that. But I mean, that's why I'm putting in the title, The Choice is Yours. But we have to be aware that there's mayhem on the horizon, and there are people that could want to break into your house to get your food, because in their mind, they're like, I'm starving, because they couldn't get their frozen pizza, and their processed foods, bags of chips and all the crap. I go to the grocery store. I mean, nowadays I don't try not to go as much, because I just get the stuff delivered to my house. They deliver right to my porch. Right? I had an order delivered yesterday. I could shop online. I could see the item, think about it, put it in my cart, decide how much money I'm spending, and then I could take an item out, replace it with something else, right? And then I'll put the order in. It's convenient for me. I like that aspect of the technology. But when I do, and I do still go walk to the grocery store, it's just that I'm fairly busy around the house and the yard right now, so I'm getting my exercise. I dropped a pound yesterday, which is, considerable, in the grand scheme of things. It's better than gaining weight. And if we indeed are going to have food shortages, you want to be, like I say, healthy and fit, because that means your body's going to require less bulk food, and you just want to focus in on healthy things. And that's why, I have this garden that I'm growing, and if this thing happens, if people freak out like they did with toilet paper and whatever, hand wipes and sanitary things like they did during the plague, if people start buying all the food out and the grocery stores have nothing and they close down, or they decide, these mob scene goes down, smash and grabs smashes the windows and goes in, and these people are like, with supermarket carts filled with, frozen pizzas, bags of chips, and, who knows what else, right? Then once they gobble all that stuff down, which they will, right? Like, pigs. And then they're going to look at, and then I've got this beautiful garden out in my backyard, and I got to worry about them climbing over the fence and trying to steal my food. If I had the money, I'd put like a cow fence, over top of my other fence. One of those high wattage type of things. So somebody tried climbing over the fence, they'd get shocked. It's it's not going to kill them, but they're definitely not going to, it's a deterrent, and probably other things, but who knows, and people try to, figure ways to get, human beings, they're crazed. That's what I'm saying. Look at this mayhem on the horizon. They're crazed. So they'll be like, figuring ways to break in somehow. So, this dystopia is coming, man. It's a Mad Max world, and it's right around the corner. And you've got people running this country that aren't even running it. And you have to look to these people like at these big meanwhile, there's like incredible. I was watching something like, now I talk about these chips all the time. And I watched something yesterday that with Intel developing a chip for like this quantum computing type of stuff. And, we're on the verge of such incredible technologies that, just given a couple of years could be life-changing, all right? And perhaps could help improve the quality of life of people. Like I say, you can't be totally reliant on technology. Technology is a tool. And let's get back to the idea of humanity and community and treating and people. Remember, we're human beings, right? And that should be our primary focus, not on like that droid behind me. or imitation man, you barely see. Or like VR, which is imitation of life, like I say. It's not real life, like an avatar, imitation of life. So when I talked about the humanities yesterday or the day before yesterday, you know, people have totally lost touch with that. And so, it's interesting, the word humanities, because on one respect, you've got the word humanities meaning the arts, literature, right? True history, language, and, the cultural aspects of life. And then the word humanity itself, singular, just being, being humane, humanity as us. We are humanity. And the study of the humanities, And it seems like both of those things are just missing from our society, and that the school systems, the education system has totally, oh wow, I've totally overfilled my coffee mug, pardon me. Was about to overflow. That was weird. Probably got some on my mustache. So it's time now, like when all of these pundits are trying, and these YouTube people, they're just trying to capitalize on it. That's why I was talking about marketing before. Because see, I'm a marketing guy. All right, I understand that stuff, and I also understand media and entertainment and all of that because I've been involved in it my life. I don't know how old I look to you, but that's just because I eat somewhat healthy. I don't think I look my true age. And there's no weirdness going on here. This I can't get snap camera to work video, so it's not like any, like this is a false, deep fake or something false here. But I don't know. I admit myself, looking at myself, it's like, yeah, some of these stories I'm telling, it's probably some people going like, well, I don't think that. How could he have like done that back then or whatever? But that's your problem, not mine. You need to do these kinds of things. In other words, eat healthy. Because if you eat healthy, you'll be fit and you will be healthy. Eat healthy, you are what you eat. And when I also say in the description or in the title, subtitle, whatever you want to call it, about you have the choice. It's like you have to make decision here. You have to choose to, choose humanity over top of, of this, as this psychologist guy said, who I started out talking about, over this death culture, this obsession with these, material objects being the center of your life, or even this death culture in the sense of wars and obsession with these kinds of things. Because the supermarkets aren't going to change. See, the big ag and big tech, big government, big pharma, the Federal Reserve, Wall Street, the real estate, the prices of real estate are like, gone out of control. That's why one of the reasons I knew this was coming down the pike, and like I said, I wrote 10 books. And that's why I bought this house. And that's why I bought this house that has a mortgage, taxes, and insurance, which with a fixed rate, by the way, of only $200 a month. That's my mortgage, taxes, and insurance. Where they're trying to, really kill me is with like the water and sewer and some of these so-called authorities that they've set up, these private companies. They pretend that they're like, people think they're part of the city or the government, but they're really not, and they just keep raising prices. It's the same with internet prices and different things like that, and utilities too. It's like they want to put all this, like I say, when windmills first came in, there was this promise of cheaper energy because it was free from, first of all, the government subsidized them. So it didn't cost them anything to do it, to put these things up, right? I mean, land leases and things like that, but the costs were minimal compared to traditional, right, means of energy. And so the idea was that, okay, we're going to get this energy from the sun and the wind, right? And so your price, it was like, okay, it'll be inexpensive. Your electric bill will go down. Instead, energy prices have increased, right? But I don't want to get into that. Watch some of my shows where I explain that. I'm not going to get into that again. That big lie that, that they've pulled, the wool they pulled over people's eyes, having to do with climate change and fossil fuels and CO2. I mean, that's just so far in fantasy land that it's ridiculous, But no, you have to think about this, is that, people are not sane, I mean, based upon my research, and I've talked about this before, looking at .gov type of sites and sifting through, their writings, their documents, their releases, putting things together. You have to cull these things together because they don't just come out right and say it, right? The media doesn't cover any of this stuff. But you're basically dealing with like perhaps half the population or more are functionally illiterate. So, do you understand the repercussions of that? Now, the ruling elite, they're not going to be affected by this at all. And for a while, the very poor will be covered under welfare. But the more people they bring in, I think they say upwards of 2 million people came in over the past year or so, into this country, and they went right on the welfare rolls. So they're getting free food and free health care. So they're taxing the system. Taxing not with a tax, but I mean putting, so much pressure on the system that it's about to burst. Now, they're going to get rid of this, Title 42. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter to me, whatever they name these different things. And they're going to start allowing these people to come in en masse this year as well. More people than came in prior. And so that means that people who are legitimately on the safety net, right? Who are getting assistance, health care and food assistance because of, disabilities, people on Social Security who've worked their whole life, right? But are still at a level of, poverty or such alike. Well, what happens when the system just doesn't have enough to go around for all of those people? They're going to lower, right, the allowances for those people because there just won't be enough. And that's another reason why why I grow my own garden. It's garbage day. So hopefully they take, I put 2 bags out because I cleaned up my yard too. That's my garden. But anyway, it must be recycling day, and I didn't put any recycling out. I don't recycle anything because I don't really use things like that. I don't drink. I used to drink like canned sodas and stuff. I haven't had any beers or anything this week, and I just basically been eating like salads and pasta. I don't even it's like I say, I'll make, if I make a soup or a pasta, I'll make it in the pot. I live alone. I'll just put a hot pad down on my bar counter and eat out of the pot. So then all I have to do is wash the fork or spoon in the pot, basically. Well, on the cutting board where I chopped up my vegetables or whatever, contents. So I don't have a lot of, I don't really have things like that, recycled things to put out. Some of these people, they've got like these recycling bins and they're just filled with all it, like, you could see they drank in the course, in the course of a week or two, like, cases of soda, all these 2-liter bottles of soft drinks and juices and milk cartons and, crazy, all this stuff. And I'm going, man, you don't realize that none of, no wonder, it's all one big circular thing, the food industry feeds the pharmaceutical industry because, people eat this stuff and they end up going to the hospital and then they're on drugs to stay alive. It's crazy. But anyway, these systems are going to be taxed. In other words, pushed to the limit. And so you have to learn. So my big priority for next year, this is probably going to start now because I watched last night and all of these so-called pundits, like these people that I have a total distaste for now because that's all they do is they parrot and comment on. They try to make it seem like they're better than, these people they criticize on cable TV or they poke fun at them, right? And I'm thinking, you're just spreading panic. And so I would say to you that, yeah, now's the time to carefully, start stocking up, start filling your pantry, but reasonably, within your means. And don't go wasting money on these MREs and these like survival type of things. Do you really want to eat bags of rice and freeze dried, MREs and stuff? Oh, it tastes really good. Look, you talk about the nutrition value. If you're out in a weird survival situation and you're doing things, yeah, it's important to get calories in so you can function. All right. And the idea whether or not you're getting your full amount of vitamins and minerals and stuff you need to be healthy and all that isn't the number one priority, right? That's the whole, but if going forward, see, the problem is it's like runaway inflation. Do you think that the Dollar Tree that's now $1.25 for everything, do you think they're going to like a year or two from now say, hey, we're going to go back to everything's $1? No. It's $1.25 indefinitely, and who knows, maybe at some point it might go up. But at the very least, it's going to be $1.25. It's like the price of gas. It may fluctuate here or there, when they make, because markets, the way the media controls everything, media moves markets and prices. So if the people who watch the nightly news, it's all the same news anyway. But if they say, oh, yeah, the president's releasing the strategic reserves, and the price of gas goes down 10 or 15 cents a gallon or something. But they neglected, it's like those lies of omission that like releasing that stuff from a strategic reserve not only puts the U.S. in a compromised position, but that it's like, 1 day's worth of fuel. But see, the media doesn't know that. It's like stock market. The stock market goes up, goes down based upon, some statement made, but it has nothing to do with reality. And in many cases, they're based on, stocks are based on futures and earnings, different things, or should be. And so the whole thing is just this talk. And that's why I'm saying mayhem on the horizon, because you've got these fear mongers now saying that we're potentially facing famine. So what you want to do is basically have a decent pantry of food that you like. And I said I was going to do this, and I've talked about this before. I want to remind you that if you have a yard or a balcony, even with just one of those hibachi type of stoves, little things, that you don't need that you can still make pasta on that. They're not just for hot dogs, hamburgers, or a steak. And you don't have to go buy charcoal, briquettes, I think they call them. I haven't bought them in a long time, but little pieces of charcoal or something and lighter fluid. You could just chop up boxes, all right? Things you have, collect some twigs, sticks, twigs, enough to make a little fire in your grill, bottom of your grill, unless you have a gas grill. And light that and feed that enough to boil the water to make yourself spaghetti, mac and cheese, or a soup, a stew, or whatever. As long, because you're cooking it in a pot, it doesn't matter. It's not like there's toxins are going to get into your food. You put a lid on the pot when you're cooking it. Do you see what I'm saying? And so this is just a very common sense thing that a lot of people, when I mention this to them, their eyes light up, go like, wow, I never thought of that, right? They thought of their grill as some place they just grilled stuff, right? And I'm like, no, it's a stovetop. So if you're in a grid down situation, the gas is got turned off, right? It's mayhem. Remember you've got that backup. And if you don't have you can get the cheapest grill in the world. It just has to have a place that you could set a pot or a pan on. I don't know about you, but I got a garage full of boxes, because every time you order something, they send it to you in a box that's twice the size as it has to be. That's all burnable stuff, just cardboard, You peel off the labels where you've got glues or things like that so you don't have the toxins, right? Cut it with the scissors or whatever, so you're just burning cardboard. Or like I say, if you have a yard like I do, I've got piles of twigs and sticks from pruning the stuff I grew last year, because my yard got out of control last year. And all that stuffs will make for a small fire. It's not like I'm talking about a fireplace. How long does it take to boil water, right? 10 minutes, or something like that. So all you need to do is have enough, and was it 8 minutes to make pasta or mac and cheese at a boiling level? So all you have to do is be able to maintain a fire for, even 15 minutes, because it'll be hot enough or whatever. 15, 20 minutes. So my advice is to stock up on spaghetti. Good old-fashioned spaghetti. Don't worry about the whole grains. Like they're trying to say, well, all these grains that come from Ukraine and these fertilizers that come from Russia and how that's going to affect that. You don't need to have a frozen pizza. It's not good for you anyway. And you can make a pan pizza on a grill. So let me give you that quickly. You know, I used to put recipes in some of my books, and I may or may not have them in these recent ones. I forget. I think the one I might. I don't know. But previous to the most recent ones, Codex and Then What, you could find my kitchen sink soup recipe, I think, in at least 2 books, right? Okay, if you want to make, you know, go out and grab yourself you could grab yourself some flour, all right? Or any kind of thing. People are, you know, they're having this, you could find this cauliflower flour type of thing, you know, ground cauliflower now. You know, different things made, you know, flour substitutes. Or you could get the, you know, the whole wheats, the whole grain stuff. It's still out there on the shelves. That stuff, you'd be surprised. You don't need much of it. It's not necessarily good for you because it's carbs, all right? But if you're obsessed and you need to have that pizza, or at least somewhere down the line, if you're somebody who has kids or something and they need a treat, you want to make sure you have like a bunch of boxes of mac and cheese, and you just buy the cheapest ones you get. Forget about name brand. It's all the same crap. It is crap too, but you know, kids like it, and you know, it's not going to hurt them, all right? You know, so comfort foods are going to be important, you know, in situations where craziness is going on. If you got to lock the doors because there's crazy people out there, you know, you might also want to try to make sure you have boards and ways of covering your windows and things. I know this sounds crazy, but mayhem is on the horizon if these people keep doing this. Now, like I say, the choice is yours. And I mean you as in everybody. It's whether or not people pay attention to these people on YouTube and cable TV and the media. But it seems to me right now that what they're doing is they're pushing this idea that we're all going to be starving in the fall. Right? Food shortages. So, in other words, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because what people will go out like they did with toilet paper, and they will hoard it. This lady next door who has these rats that I've been laboring to keep out of my yard, all right? Because I grow a garden. I don't want any pests in here. I don't want anything getting near my food. That's what I've been working on, and I'll be out there today if it doesn't rain all day, shoring up some spots because I'm sure they dug another hole overnight. And I'll have to like pour concrete and stuff in that until eventually I've got my place, you know, my backyard will eventually become a fortress over the course of the summer. No creature will get in except for something that could fly in, you know, over top of an 8 or 10 foot fence. I hate to have to live that way, but you know, mayhem on the horizon. But back to this pizza thing. So you got to make sure that you have like some canned fruits, fruit cups. You know, did you ever see that? You know, I mean, this stuff is not healthy. See, there comes a point where if you have children or if you have people that are just functionally illiterate who are going to go crazy, you've got to, you know, I'm starving. Well, you look in the supermarket and you'll find like in pudding and Jell-O, not the stuff that's in the cold refrigerated section, but the other side, where you could probably buy like a 4-pack of Jell-O for $1 something, or a 4-pack of pudding for $1 something. Well, it's just on the shelves. Doesn't need refrigeration. Okay, just you know, check the expiration dates. Make sure it's you got a year or so on it. You know. Get a couple of those things. Throw them in your pantry, in your cabinets. Get some fruit, you know, canned fruits, right? To, you know, like, you know, whatever. For people, you know, which, you know, even though they're not the greatest and they're syrupy and sugary, but for kids and stuff, I mean, people who go crazy, right? Same with, like I said, mac and cheese. Get a bunch of boxes of spaghetti, all right? and little cans of sauce. You don't need big cans of sauce. Little cans of sauce, or better yet, just cans of tomato paste. And when you boil the pasta, and instead of worrying about multiple pots, open up the can of tomato paste when the pasta seems like it's done, and put the tomato paste in there and stir it right in that pot, in that water. It'll thicken it up, and your spaghetti's ready to go. Sprinkle in some Italian seasoning or Parmesan cheese, and you've got a pasta meal to serve for several people. Spaghetti. All right? Now, if you want to make pizza, okay, budget pizza on on your thing, on your grill, you get a bowl. You put in any kind of flour, whatever your preference is, a cup of flour. You add a little olive oil or water. Forget about the yeast. You don't need the yeast. Okay? You know what I used to put in? I used to just put in a dash. You could put in some baking powder or baking soda, something like that. I mean, just a smidgen of it. Or you could buy this. They have these boxes of this Jiffy stuff, right? People make muffins out of. So that has some of that stuff to give it a little bit of a rise. But you're making pizza, so you don't need it to rise much at all. Get a cast iron pan, all right? We're talking about making a pan pizza. Mommy, we want pizza. Or your hubby wants pizza, or your wife wants pizza, right? You're going stir crazy, all right? I'm running out of time. Well, anyway, you mix this up. You pour it into, you don't have to worry about, you mold it into a piece of dough and you flatten it out and put it in. You put the pan on the grill. All right. So the pan's hot. You put down a little bit of olive oil or some kind of thing like that. All right. And you flatten out this pizza thing there. Okay. You put it, you leave it flat like that for a couple of minutes, and then you flip it over. Okay. Because you wanted to heat that part. Now, on the top of it, you sprinkle on some cheese or whatever you happen to have. And you could have canned mushrooms. You could have canned, like, stewed tomatoes or canned tomatoes. And if you don't have, like, real cheese or mozzarella cheese, you could just sprinkle on Parmesan cheese, because you could have that stuff stored in your pantry, in your cabinets. All right? And you put a lid on that, right? And you've got a pizza in about 10 minutes. And you sprinkle on some Italian seasoning or whatever your favorite seasoning is, or olive oil or something like that. And you just made a pizza on a grill. And people will like it. They'll eat it, right? The key is having some canned mushrooms or canned tomatoes or canned whatever you like. Some people like anchovies. Excuse me. So what I'm saying is that be prepared for this kind of stuff, but don't be a prepper, because you just want to have regular food that you can eat no matter what. Maybe this won't happen, but if it does happen, So I would start stocking up on some basic stuff, inexpensive, real foods. All right? And I would, if you have a window that's south facing, say you don't have a balcony or a backyard, but you get sun, I would extend that window out, and I would get some lettuce leaves, some chard, some basic seeds. All right? You could buy these packs where they have like home garden and it's everything in there, right? I've seen these things advertised. They're not that expensive. And get that set up. Get some, go to the Dollar General, Dollar Tree or whatever, and buy yourself some pots and get some soil, and be prepared to make your own food too, to complement, have fresh food or herbs to, put, on your, to put in your spaghetti or your homemade pizza or whatever it is, right? And get one of these things like I have advertised, which I'll show you at the end, well, I'll show, no, let me just show you here. One of these jackeries that I'm using to charge, light the on-air light. And so this is all doable, but the choice is yours. Don't panic. All right? Try to have a sense of community. Remember that you're a human being. All right? Get yourself some power backup in case the grid goes down or something insane happens. So you could have music and a computer, laptops charged and stuff. So your kids or you can still watch certain things. The internet might go down, but that doesn't mean, whatever you have existing, you can't watch and use. Right? So download the things you need to download. Your music collection should be your own. I've got 20,000 songs. I have books, buy my books, right? Anyway, like I said, these are crazy times. There's no doubt about it. And I don't see the people out there that people are paying attention to realizing the responsibility they have to not create panic. Like I said, when I'm talking about my AI ideas and, Earth cataclysms and the cyclical cycles of the sun and all that stuff, it's a doom and gloom thing in a sense, but it's not like I'm fear-mongering you in a sense of saying, hey, tomorrow, is the end of the world. But these people are basically telling you tomorrow, this year's the end of the world. So you have to understand that could become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because people could go to the stores this weekend and start emptying the shelves. And then you're screwed. So just be aware of that. And talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to whatever your community is. Or if you live alone like me, just make sure you have a garden or you have a pantry and you have music and things to do to occupy yourself and to secure your house from lunatics. Because that's what's going to happen, smash and grabbers and all those people. Because what they're going to do is they're going to go grab as much stuff as they can, and then they're going to gobble it all down, and they'll go to the beer distributor and break into the liquor store, and they're going to have a couple of drunken weekends and feasts, and then everything's going to be gone. And it's not going to be replaced, and the trucks aren't going to come back and fix the glass at the grocery store and the liquor store and replenish the supplies. They're going to go screw that. So you better be able to survive. So just remember that. This is a reality. We're going to talk. This is going to be a topic that we're going to talk about in the coming shows. So as always, go to my site, ROCKFLUX.com. Today's the last day you can get 15% off my clothing. And I'd appreciate it if you would do that. Go to Great Solar Stuff. You'll find these power backups and even like some portable solar panels. But you can just get a power backup that's chargeable from your house or your car or whatever. All right? And that'll charge your laptop, cell phone, even run your computer, run lights and things like that. Depends on which model you buy. And there's my 2 latest books, Then What and Codex. I advise you to get them. I think I'm selling Then What for $9.95. Get the print edition because they don't translate well digitally, but they're available everywhere. Listen to some of my beat poetry songs. Some are good, some aren't. But, there's a lot of information that, all this stuff is a companion pieces for these shows. So I do this stuff for you. I'm not monetized on YouTube. I don't make any money that way. So, this is just my way of trying to give you a heads up and tell you look, ways you can get through this madness that's going on right now. It's as if the entire world's gone mad. Anyway, take care. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Cheers.